May Day. It's being live streamed. I have no idea that you could live stream to YouTube and things like that. So that's pretty cool.
Ah, we are sophisticated.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Y'all got it going on.
All right. Well, I do have 6:31. I think a few folks are still getting connected to audio, and some will probably come in while we're talking. But Kathy, Jean said I could just take it from the beginning. Do you want to say anything before I get started?
Since I just dropped in, you carry it, because I'm getting everything up and running on the YouTube.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the League of Women Voters of Alabama Environmental Education Series. We've had some really great programs in this series over the last year. Thanks so much to Nancy Muse for spearheading this and choosing the speakers and are inviting the speakers. And I am Cindy Lowry. I'm the board president of the League of Women Voters of Greater Birmingham. And also in my day job, I run an environmental organization called the Alabama Rivers Alliance. So I've been asked to moderate many of these, and I'm happy to do it because it is my passion. And most of the speakers are people that I get to work with on a regular basis. And that's also something that is very rewarding. And I'm really, really excited for our speaker tonight. I got to spend a long late night, early morning with Abigail Franks this past Friday. Abigail is actually a supporter and friend of the Alabama Rivers Alliance, is one of our young professional river defenders. But that is not her claim to fame. That's just something that she's started doing recently, and we're glad to have her be a part of our work. But Abigail is the programs and policy manager for I'm drawing a blank for a second what SCEN stands for, Southeast Climate and Energy Network.
Yeah, there we go. It's
a great network, which I'm sure she'll tell you more about, that runs across the states, across the Southeast, working on climate and energy. She graduated Summa Cum Laude from the University of Alabama at Birmingham with a BA in political science and peace, justice, and ecology, and was a 2019 Rhodes Finalist for the University of Oxford. So Abigail is smart, and I can profess to that not just on paper, but in real life from having talked to her many, many hours. And she's very passionate about transforming the South into a sustainable and resilient region through advocating for and eventually crafting climate mitigation and adaptation policies. Abigail has worked for nonprofits such as the People's Justice Council and Black Warrior Riverkeeper. And in college, she founded and led the organization WEARE, which stands for We Envision Alabamian Renewable Energy. And in her free time, Abigail enjoys listening to podcasts, exercising, whether it be dancing, yoga, or running, and cuddling with her dog, Ginny. So we're very excited to have Abigail talk to us about, I know that there's climate change and all of that entails is a very important topic. It is causing a lot of anxiety in our world and in ourselves as individuals and in our communities. It is causing a lot of disaster and harm already in Alabama. And Abigail has been very involved and on the front lines of some of the things that are happening already, and also the discussions and policies that we need to support in order to get where we need to be with climate change. So I will turn it over to Abigail.
Great. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. I didn't know you can update that option, and that is good to know for future events. Hi, y'all. Nice to meet y'all. My name's Abigail Franks, like Cindy said, and like y'all can see on the screen. And I am so happy to be here with all of you and to discuss talking about like climate change, climate justice, social justice, and how that all ties together, but also understanding that in order for everyone to keep fighting, sorry, now everybody's muted, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, in order for people to keep fighting and to honestly keep being engaged in topics that are as hard as any justice issue, you need to learn how to practice interpersonal resilience, and you need to learn what it means, like how narratives really impact this work. So I'm going to share my screen. And my hair is wet. I'm going to be completely honest. My hair is wet because I just got back from a mile run because I'm following my own advice when it comes to interpersonal resilience, and exercise is a way to do it. But let us get started. The official title for this is Interpersonal Resilience, Practicing Hope in the Face of the Climate Crisis and Other Injustices. That seems a very lofty goal, but I promise it's not when it comes to the actual practical implications of it. But we'll talk about it all. So here's the agenda for tonight. I'm going to tell y'all my story, why I'm here, why I'm spouting the things that I'm spouting. I'm going to talk about the intersectionality of the climate crisis, the climate narrative and why it matters, revolutionary optimism and interpersonal resilience, and then we'll close out. All right. So let's start off with my story. While my resume talks about how I was a finalist for Oxford or the places I've worked and the degrees I have received / are going for, what it does not say is I grew up in an impoverished rural community right outside, I would say it was about 20 minutes outside of Decatur, Alabama, towards Summerville, Alabama. Population 700. I swear a seventh of that population is my family, the Franks family. And it's really about, when I grew up there, the poverty rate was about 30%. And for those who have never lived in a community like that, when the percentage is really high, that doesn't even count the people who live around the poverty line, who dance in between. And so in general, it points to a lack of reliable infrastructure, lack of dependable electricity if you lived in the middle of nowhere like I did, and a lack of reliable authority. And so I found myself finding sanctuary and sanity in the woods behind my trailer park and the river down the dirt road. The river I grew up playing in was the Tennessee River, which kind of comes through Tennessee, scoops through the top of Alabama, and then goes back into Tennessee. And I'm going to unblur my background because it's distracting me, and y'all will see my guest bedroom in the background. So this is what I grew up in. That was my house. What's not being shown there is the open sewage that ran in my front and backyard, from septic tanks that were busted and not working, or that this is entirely made of gravel. It's things like that. And so this is where I grew up. One moment. There we go. And it's when I had my first epiphany of environmental injustice. Now, environmental injustice essentially refers to a set of actions, and I love this definition. I think it was by L.B. Crump, who's like an environmental lawyer. But they said that environmental injustice refers to a set of actions that deliberately harm the environment. Well, not deliberately. They simultaneously harm the environment while also alienating specific communities and groups. In other words, it hurts the planet and it's always going to hurt people too. Usually refers to pollution. It usually refers to like exposure to pollution. It refers to exposure to Superfund site, which is essentially a really polluted area. And I promise I'm saying all the depressing things first. It all matters. But this was my first epiphany of environmental injustice. It turned out that the river I grew up playing in, the orange was not mud, but in fact, mercury and forever chemicals like PCBs, raw sewage, things like that. And my family always said that the river was dirty, but we figured all rivers were dirty. And so there were no advisories, there was nothing. But all of us kind of knew that it was bad because it smelled bad. And it wasn't until 2019 and 2020 that the major companies that live in that area got sued for all the pollution that they've been emitting. So let me show y'all real quick. Hold on. Exiting out of the screen real quick and pulling up the map so y'all can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so I love ArcGIS. It's also a story map. I don't know if y'all have ever seen anything like this, but it is really cool. And let me make sure. Don't know what this is. Aha. It was me zoomed all the way in because I was double checking my references. So we're going to scroll. First of all, the Tennessee River, if you grew up in the top half of North Alabama, you've probably benefited from this river. It is the most plastic polluted river one of the most plastic polluted rivers in the world. Not just the nation, the world. And so that's one of the many pollutants. Other major ones include industrial chemicals like these, microplastics, raw sewage, and agriculture runoff. When we scroll down, it shows this beautiful map that explains the contamination. Here it is. Can y'all see my screen, by the way? Great, okay. So in red, kind of highlights where most of the pollutions are. This is where I grew up, was right over here. So we're going to keep scrolling. You see these massive drop-off sites. These are contamination near the waterways, and not directly in them. This is mercury contamination. Oh, sorry, I was a little over. It's right here. Mercury contamination. PCBs. I'll say. I wanted to show you all the raw sewage one because it lights up like crazy. Okay. Anyway, y'all get the picture. I will put it back to the original presentation now. Sorry, I'm used to being able to flip between screens easily. Present. Make sure y'all can see my screen.
Can't see, there it goes.
Right, okay. So turns out the orange in the river was not mud. And when you grow up in an impoverished region, I do want to point out that poverty is a really good ecosystem where injustice is blatantly obvious. I would say injustice is more insidious and behind closed doors, depending on income level. But for poor folks, it is really, really obvious that something bad is happening. And my experience is like many others. It's actually, when it comes down to it, most of y'all may have been exposed or may have been a part of an environmental injustice. And they specifically tend to hurt communities that are low income, rural, Black, brown, Indigenous. Yes, those are the main categories that tend to make it okay for, quote, okay for people to dump pollutions into people's communities. So let's fast forward to college. When I came to college, I was passionate. I am passionate about so many different things, to the point that I had difficulty choosing a major, because I was like, oh my God, I want to do everything. I want to fix everything. Economic issues, women's rights, voting, democracy actions, anything like that. Like if there was something that needed to be fixed in our society, I wanted to be a part of the solution. And I realized that when I focused on climate change / climate justice, all of those issues are kind of intersecting, to the point that when you focus on climate change, you're almost knocking down all the other things. It's all deeply, deeply interconnected. But during freshman year, I was in a class called Burning Issues, which was an honors college class that taught us to focus our attention to one specific thing / some type of issue. And that opened the door for me to begin researching about environmental injustice and the climate crisis, which are so deeply intertwined, and I'll discuss why in a moment. But this is when I had my second epiphany of environmental justice. This was, let's say, 2017 or so. I was a freshman in 2016. But this is when I had my second huge epiphany, and it turned out that the pollution and corporate greed / negligence, depending on how you say it or how you view it, it wasn't a trailer park issue, but a systemic one. This is in Birmingham, Alabama. I took this picture and then I turned around and there was a kids' school right across the street. And all of these kids are deliberately, well, not deliberately, they are exposed to pollutants and they have asthma now, and there's higher rates of cancer, things like that. And this is the James H. Miller Jr. plant, which is out in Shelby County, Alabama. And it's technically one of the largest CO2 emitters in the entire country. And it's in our backyard. And I wanted to also show y'all the EJ mapping screen, which will help y'all see whether or not your community has been impacted by environmental injustice. And I'm going to share the screen now. Great. So this is EPA's EJ screen. You literally just look up EPA's Environmental Justice Screening and Mapping Tool. I will send all the links after this, but you can see on the left over here, there are different categories that you can click on to see which communities are exposed to what. Let's go to where I live now, in Birmingham, Alabama. Well, that showed me Birmingham, UK, Birmingham, Alabama. Perfect. Okay. So let's say, for example, air, let's look at particulate matter. Particulate matter is, they can be found in smokestacks. They're just basically particles that enter the air, and they're from polluting resources. So I clicked on particulate matter, and 80 to 90% of this area is impacted by bad air quality. Let's go to Superfund proximity, super polluted sites. So we can see that it's concentrated into different areas here, especially in North Birmingham, especially in Avondale Park, Fountain Heights. This means 95 to 100% are exposed to the toxins. And let's see if let's just see if low-income people live here. Yes, they do. Let's see, that's 95 to 100%. So this is the more low-income area of Alabama, or Birmingham in general, up to 90%. So people of color. So what people have started noticing is that when they start showing where the poor people live, where the people of color live, tended to be where the polluting sites are. And I wanted to show this because I'm going to put this in the chat so y'all can look into your own areas and your own homes.
Somebody already put it in there.
Oh, fantastic. Even better.
And it will also be sent out with the recording. So we'll make sure we do this.
Perfect. Okay. We'll go back to sharing screen. And thank y'all for working with me and being present with me as I flip through screens. I'm used to, like I said, I'm used to having a different setup, but great. Okay, so this was my second epiphany. And again, I'm telling you all the depressing things first so we can leave uplifted and work together. So this is the intersection of the climate crisis. If y'all walk away with anything from my presentation, please know that the climate crisis is a symptom of the problem and not the actual problem. It is a symptom of an extractive economy and an extractive society. And while this also means that the problems that we're experiencing are interconnected and complex and really hard to figure out, it also means that the solutions to the climate crisis will also, it'll solve multiple problems at once. Chances are, if you're working to clean up the environment, you're also improving the health of those around you. You're making sure people have access to clean air and clean water, all that kind of stuff. So essentially, whatever you're passionate about can be tied back to this. And you can find out, what works best for you. I have this YouTube video. We're not going to do that since y'all are not students, like I usually work with. But social injustice, according to this definition, is justice in terms of distribution to wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. Environmental injustice refers to a set of actions that harm the environment while also simultaneously alienating groups of people, thinking they're the only ones that are experiencing this. And then you have climate injustice, which talks about how climate change and its impacts will be felt differently by different groups of people, by different locations. And some places and people are more vulnerable to these impacts than others. Some places are well equipped and they are super ready to handle whatever is thrown at them, like disaster, like climate disaster wise. Some communities are not. And that's the intersection. So like I said, whatever you're working in probably can be tied back to this in some way. Okay, that was a lot of information I threw at y'all. And oh, I see the heart. Thank you. I hate that I can't see all of your faces at once. So I'm going, if we could, actually, it's fine. It's fine.
Do you want to go back? Do you want to go back to gallery view? I'll unspotlight you.
It's all good. I'll be okay. Thank you though. But let's do a quick breather / check-in. This is the end of the day on Monday. Most of y'all probably had a long day like me. So if you want to stay on camera, if you don't want to, that's fine too. But let's just do a quick grounding exercise. If you are able, put your feet on the ground, feel them on the ground. If you can't, do something with your arms and put them flat on your desk. We're gonna shake a little bit of our arms, okay? Get a feeling. Something I've noticed is that when we talk about really hard things like this, we start to feel it and we hold it in our bodies and we don't let it leave. Okay? Feet on the ground, feeling the earth support you. We're going to do a square breathing exercise where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, let out for 4, hold for 4. Okay? We're going to do that 3 times and I'm going to count. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Let out. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Let out. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Last round. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Let out. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Thank you. You can come back on camera if you want or not. Shake. I see some like people stretching and stuff like me. Yes, this is hard. And like I said, I threw it all at y'all within like 20 minutes. So thank you. Let's keep moving. Well, first, can I get a thumbs up? Are we good to keep moving? Great. Perfect. Okay. So the importance of stories matter. It's why I told y'all my story in the beginning of this, so y'all know who I am, where I came from, and why I'm here in front of y'all today. But essentially, stories have such a deep impact in the way that we view ourselves and in the way that we view the world around us without even like on a very deeply subconscious level. But I love this quote that said that stories help us explain everything in our experience, from science to relationships, from feelings to memories, and from questions to objections. With every story we hear, read, or listen to, our mind makes cognitive and emotional connections that shape our perspective of the world. Most people would assume that humans are the problem when it comes to climate change. They would assume that, the only solution is less people. There's this narrative that we hurt the planet and that's all we do. But in reality, people have harmoniously lived with nature for thousands of years. We are a part of it. We're not apart from it. And so when we think about, first of all, when we think about like climate change and adaptation in general, we don't really picture, I don't know, okay, if y'all are like me, you picture at first doom and gloom, nobody's prepared, it's scary, everything's scary. People are doing scarcity, like they're thinking in terms of scarcity. And the media loves to paint anything like that as well. When you look up the future, dystopian things come up. It's the shows that we watch. It is the media we consume. It's all around us. And to be honest, it sells. You see this, you see people going through hardship. People are probably going to watch it, and that's why they keep pushing it. But now it's gone to the point that people are not allowing themselves to be creative about what the future could look like, because they assume this is kind of what we got going on. And to be fair, when I looked up the future, these were the images that came up. Not happy ones, not ones where we adapted, not ones where we came together, not ones where we faced adversity and rose above it. These are what came up. And I say this as someone who loves Black Mirror, who loves Hunger Games, and is going to be seeing it in theaters when it comes out. The new one's coming out pretty soon. But anyway, this is what comes up. Why doesn't this come to mind first? And these look future, like these look almost outlandish to me. For in a pipe dream. We could be using farms for not only producing, oh, my internet is unstable. Hopefully y'all can hear me fine, but
you paused for a minute, but you caught up, so it's good.
Perfect. Okay. Walkable cities, accessible cities, public transportation. We have reliable power over here, and the sheep that are not really bothered by the panels because they're going to just go through them and under them and keep them trimmed up. This, I forget what this is called. I think it doesn't matter. I forget the specific type, but this house is completely sustainable and made from materials that were gathered around the area that it was built. And then this is Singapore. These buildings and bridges are completely and totally within nature, to where a lot of critters and animals can live there safely. And not only that, but they're seeing a drastic reduce in flooding, because these plants are soaking up the water. They're seeing a drastic reduce in energy consumption because it lowers energy usage by keeping things cool, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a possibility, and this could be the narrative that we focused on, but we're getting there. So revolutionary optimism. Those benefiting from suffering want us to give up. Hope is a discipline, by Mariam Kamba. I love that quote, because it's something that you have to cultivate every single day, even when you don't want to, and even when you're almost too tired to. It's something that requires a lot of work. It's almost like gardening, where you have to go back and you have to weed, and you have to consistently like check on everything. It's a lot of work, but it's also necessary when it comes to thinking about transforming our world in any kind of way. There are ways to cultivate hope. I'm not just going to be like, y'all need to have hope, and then I'm going to dip. Here are the ways that you can actually cultivate hope, and it's been proven. So media, y'all ever heard the saying, you are what you eat? I would like to barter and say it is you are what you consume. For every one bad thing you read, you need 3 different combating sources of good news to make up for what your brain has learned from the bad news. If you're like me, you know, if you have social media like Instagram, Facebook, anything like that, its algorithm is tracking what you're looking at the most. And if it sees that you're doom scrolling, which is like you see something bad happen and you're like, oh my God, I have to know everything about it. Research, research, research. And then your whole phone and social media is disaster after disaster after disaster. It is no surprise that your brain is going to think that is reality. That is all we can hope for. Like, this is it. This is the outside world. So be careful about what you consume. Invest in stories and narratives that have a hopeful and honestly realistic view, in my opinion, of climate solutions, because we have all the solutions. We just have to have the political willpower to do them. Just want to put that out there. The solutions are out there, follow them. Wawagathuru, I'll type her name out in the chat after this. She's so awesome. She was a Udall scholar with me, and now she's like on Vogue and things like that. And all she does is focus on climate solutions. It's called Black Girl Environmentalist, is the nonprofit that she founded. She's awesome. And an example. Another example is Braiding Sweetgrass by Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. Really fantastic ecologist, Anishinaabe woman from the New York area. She talks about humans' relationship with the earth in the way that like her people have lived for thousands of years. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Another thing, rest. I know all y'all got off of work, and for some reason y'all got off of work, came to this presentation to expand your mind even more, and you're doing all this, whether there's dinner cooking in the background and things like that. So I'm telling you, because you are the people that need to hear this, to rest. There is no resist without rest. It's even in the word. And something I've noticed as I have now left a place that was consistently traumatic to me is that my body, or everyone's body, will force you to rest if you do not take it yourself. Whether if you get sick and your body's like, thank goodness she could finally sleep in the bed for 2 weeks, like your body's going to make you rest. So you have to. There's no if, and, or but about it. It's like eating. It's like drinking. I'm just letting you know. And I say this as a former/recovering perfectionist, that I'm like, rest, I don't deserve it because I didn't get anything done today. No, we're going to stamp that right now. Move. Like I said in the beginning of this presentation, my hair is wet/drying because I honestly was holding all the stress in my body all day. And I knew that the only way to get rid of it was to make my brain think it was running from the threat. And it works. The runner's high is a thing. It's very important. But moving in some kind of way, depending on whatever way your body is able to move. Play. Humans are very natural at playing. I think that's why a lot of people love being around kids, is because it allows them to play. But humans, part of every culture has some kind of game or some kind of bonding activity or some kind of, and playing could look like art. It could look like any hobby. It could look like playing for me is goofing off with my friends and laughing until my stomach hurts, or playing D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. That's like something I love to do. But it's normal and it's healthy to do that. And then also reconnect. And like I said, if you take anything out of my presentation, this is another sparkly jewel that I offer. 3 R's: rest, reconnect, run. When it comes to cultivating hope or cultivating resilience of any kind, resting in some kind of way, reconnecting with yourself and your loved ones and your community, especially your community, that helps. And then running or releasing endorphins in some kind of way of exercise helps, and then resting helps. But it's necessary. And these are no ifs, ands, or buts. Reconnection could also look like attending each other's events like you are today. It can also look like me going to the crawfish boil the Alabama Rivers Alliance had, or doing a litter cleanup in my community. Or I live in the like Glen Iris area, 5 Points area now. That looks like reconnection. The story of hope, Imagineering. This ties into the narrative and how important it is for us to be not only consuming positive narratives, but putting them out as well. Imagineering, according to the internet, is the implementation of creative ideas into practical form. Disney trademarked it, so don't sue me, but it's a tool used to envision a better life in general. And normally with students, I ask them to get sticky notes, and there's like a board that we usually do. And I ask them to write down using the 5 senses, what your ideal future/community looks like. For example, I want to be able to hear birds. I want to be able to smell clean air and not have to worry about wearing a mask outside when it comes to air pollution. I want to see people out and about in the neighborhood feeling comfortable enough to walk around, feeling comfortable enough to wheel around, to talk to your neighbors, sit on porches. But that's Imagineering. And then what you do after you Imagineer and you let yourself like kind of play and pretend that you are president of everything, like the creator of everything, and everything goes your way, write down those ideas and put them somewhere where you can see them. And then when you have the ideas, you start making you need to start thinking of ways for that to be achievable, like what is needed in order for that to be achievable. So if we need to hear like birds outside, we need to reduce noise pollution. How do we reduce noise pollution? We implement sidewalks to make sure people can get to where they need to go without a car. We get noise pollution like required, things like that. So like you kind of break it down by each little thing, and that's Imagineering. But since we're not going to do that today, I just wanted to briefly discuss it and encourage y'all to do that. And I will send information as need be for Imagineering. And then I also wanted to include turning your imaginary community into reality, because you can. These solutions are possible. And so I put 3 prongs here. Professionally, there may be a way for you to do this work and get paid for it, like me. Or if your company or wherever your work wants to like go do something like this, whether it's climate justice, whether it's any social justice or economic justice, there may be a way you can get paid to do this. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. You can also individually adapt. There is a narrative that like some people are like, oh, 70% of emissions are 100 companies' fault, so I shouldn't do anything because it's not my fault. And then I like to argue that there's still 30% and then that we buy from those companies as well. So there needs to be individual adaptation and especially community adaptation. But how can you ask your community to change if you're not going to change yourself? So change your lifestyle to be more eco-friendly / people-friendly where possible. Listen to Black, Latinx, Indigenous folks about justice issues. Educate yourself, read books, watch documentaries, anything like that. And then also, and most importantly, in my opinion, invest in your community. This can be done through volunteering. This could be done, y'all are already investing in your community by being here, so I'm less worried about that. But I encourage you to invest in your community that you live in as well. Donate money if you have it, and starting and participating in mutual aid. And mutual aid is essentially the practice of like, you bring something, let's say you have excess clothes in your closet that you need to get rid of, and you're like, man, I'm not wearing this stuff anymore. I'm going to open this up, have a yard sale, and make everything 50 cents a pop, go ham. Things like that. But yeah, that's investing in your community. And that is my presentation. And I'm going to get off, stop sharing there. But yeah, now I can see your names and faces, and we can open the floor for questions and everything. I definitely don't want to keep us here until 8 p.m. for those who are eating and stuff. So that's why I try to keep my presentation short enough for questions. But yeah, opening the floor to Cindy.
Yeah, so if you guys want to, if you have the ability to put a question in the chat, that keeps the conversation easier. But if you don't have that ability and you want to come off mute, I will do my best to scan the screen and see if you'll speak up, you'll show up on my screen. So if anyone has questions for Abigail, I just think that this is a really interesting presentation and a great perspective. I definitely have the tendency to fall into the doom loop sometimes. And so it's really great to think of it from this way. I see, Debbie, you have your hand raised.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Abigail, for this amazing presentation. Debbie Chang, hers. I live in Huntsville, and I volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby. I was wondering, Abigail, if you identified any like organized environmental justice communities in Alabama that we could follow and support and be a part of?
Yeah, so there's, yes, thank you, Debbie. There is a lot. Goodness, let me just pull up. In Alabama in particular, we got folks, Energy Alabama is a great group in Huntsville. I'm trying to go by like region. Let's see. We got Energy in Alabama in Huntsville. There's group, I know I'm particularly familiar with those in Birmingham. So that's like GASP, Greater Alliance to Stop Pollution, Sweet Alabama, that's Sustainable Water and Energy. Forget the other two. You know, we all have acronyms. Same with SCEN for Southeast Climate Energy Network and League of Women Voters and things like that. But yeah, let's see. Sweet Alabama, trying to go by region. I can send a whole list, but these groups are there. People have been engaged in this work for decades. And that is something that is very humbling as a 25-year-old that's like, I'm going to change everything. And people have said, girl, sit down. We've been doing this for a long time. Yeah, that's it. But those are some examples that I can think of. In Mobile, a lot of honestly, Alabama Rivers Alliance is doing some great work. Black Warrior Riverkeeper is doing great work. The Mobile Baykeeper is doing great work, because when it comes to pollution, even in rivers, they're polluting the communities that live around those rivers too. And so that's something to consider.
There's the Mobile Environmental Justice Action Coalition, MEJAC, down in
MEJAC.
Mobile. They're really, it's interesting because Huntsville is probably the least as far as like community grown or community level environmental justice groups. We know, I feel like I even know the least about environmental justice communities in Huntsville. So that may be something we could all get together and look into.
And I'm looking through.
Let's see, Kathy, do you have a question?
Well, I wanted to just mention one thing, that the Huntsville Environmental Coalition is new. That's I just wanted to mention that to Debbie, because that's a brand new group. But and then also I wanted to mention that there is an event on June the 24th in Montevallo with NAACP is the main organizer, but they're having a climate change strategic planning session, looking at what the impact of since the Shelby v. Holder decision. So I was thinking we may want to try to figure out if there's something. This could be a really good presentation for that type of forum.
I know another great group is Panic Alabama, or Panic. It is People Against Neighborhood Industrial Contamination. Something that is an unfortunate reality of environmental justice in general / most justice issues is that the people who are impacted the most can't afford to, most of the time, can't afford to even have time to advocate for themselves, and especially organize in a very like strategic manner. It is happening, and the most effective ones are those who are community led, but that is an unfortunate reality. Chess and Mobile. Yes, Dr. Kenya Goodson. There we go, coming in clutch. And so, yeah, I hope that answers your question, Debbie.
Yeah, and Martha posted in the chat that the Huntsville Environmental Coalition, I believe Debbie's already a part of that group. And Martha posted, one of the members of that and I think employee of Energy Alabama, Jackson Talbert, did his senior paper on EJ communities in Huntsville. So that might be a great resource that we can look to. And then there's the People's Justice Council also getting a shout out in the chat. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Debbie said name people, and I was like, oh Lord, that's like, yeah, Uniontown too.
And then we got some folks that said talking about the Fairhope Environmental Advisory Board and Baldwin County Environmental Board. So we have a lot of resources here in Alabama. It's just figuring out where you want to plug in. Uniontown has an environmental justice group. One of the members, the groups that the league is a member of, Alabama Forward, is civic engagement table that's focused on a lot of voter education and voting rights issues. But also many of the groups that are members of Alabama Forward are also working on environmental justice, or sort of learning and connecting to environmental justice as part of their work as well. So there's definitely a lot of great resources.
Well, and something a lot of, I think environmental groups in particular are learning is that you can't have any like environmental like legislation, any environmental protections without also considering people and knowing that it's not just the polar bears, it's not just, you know, the endangered fish in Alabama, it's also the people who live off that water and who live off that community. Like, and that's going to make a huge difference in legislation actually happening, in my opinion. But let's see, I am trying to get the questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at those too. And I got a private one. Debbie, I don't know how to make you save the chat. So maybe Jean is the like original host of this. Can you make it where the chat is savable, or are we can we get all these links to people?
I think Kathy will have to do that now because I'm not co-host. She's the host.
Okay.
No.
I am a co-host. I just don't know how to do that.
So one question I saw that I love by Ginny's, because I love how honest it is what can we really do about the industries that spew these chemicals? I can tell you, there are not enough citizen scientific reports of pollution. And what that means is that if you get water testing kits, if you get like soil contamination testing kits and test them and prove that pollution is happening in this area, that those types of reports will eventually be gathered into an official like complaint, like it becomes a legal complaint, right, Cindy? Like that's one way you can do it.
Well, you have to send the complaint into ADEM. They have a terrible website, but they do have a complaint form on their website, the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, and you can put complaints in there. It feels like it goes into a vacuum. You may not hear back, but it does build the record over time. So when a Riverkeeper or an organization that is working on those issues then is also building a case for trying to hold the polluter accountable, those kinds of complaints from citizens make a big difference in building that case.
Yeah, that's one thing I would do. Another thing I would do is to vote, especially, and y'all, I don't have to tell y'all to vote. Y'all are going to vote, but it's voting specifically for those who regulate the polluters, such as the Public Service Commission. That's a group. It's 3 people, and they dictate almost everything in our daily lives when it comes to energy, transportation, that kind of stuff. And they are, well, I can't tell y'all who to vote for, but what I will say is vote for people who actually genuinely care about these things. And if you don't know how they feel free to email them and ask, or things like that, and then try to get them to say something, because most of the time they're going to try to avoid the question, and that's an answer in of itself. Vote for people who actually care, threaten them and say, hey, if you don't care or act on this, I'll make sure to vote you out, like that kind of thing, because they are democratically elected. Yes, environmentalists are actually notorious for being less likely to vote. I did not know that.
I read that recently on some kind of.
Well, no wonder we don't have any legislation, y'all. What is that? Like, my goodness.
I don't think that's true. I don't know that it was. I read it as national data. I don't know if it's like true Alabama specific, but it is. And that's why, our legislators are not hearing as much about the environment as they are about some of the other issues. So it's not rising to the top of their priority list either. So
yeah, and something else I would do, like when it comes to getting issues like this on the table, if you do live around these areas that are polluted, if you're experiencing health impacts, take specific notes of, for example, I have a headache and it smells like the paper plant outside, and I know it's the paper plant that I live next to. And every time that they do that, I get these horrific headaches. Then that can count as evidence and a case against them. So it kind of depends if you want to take the long game for legislation. Yes. And then another thing, yes, the fire in Moody was a prime example of environmental injustice, and it impacted a lot of Alabamians, and the health impacts from that, yeah, I see Victoria Miller too. Like that's alone. But another thing is don't assume that Republicans don't care about these issues. Alabama Rivers Alliance, like Cindy, you proved like with the Shore Act, like some Republicans are signing off on it, right? And this isn't, and don't assume Democrats care about the environment either. Let's be clear. So just assume who you're talking to, like, don't assume that their political party dictates how they feel about the environment at all. They probably have actually, if you live on Earth, you have a stake in how things are ran when it comes to that. But yeah, let me go to another question. Let's see.
There's a lot of comments. I'm not sure if I see
I'm loving the comments though.
specific questions.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm just looking through and making sure. It says for everyone who personally contacts their legislators, they know there are many, many more who have the same opinion. Speaking out to them is important. League of Women Voters is looking for members who would like to help review proposed legislation. That's pretty dope. Janine says, I serve on the Fairhope Environmental Advisory Board, Municipal, and the Baldwin County Environmental Board. Our League of Women Voters Baldwin County is having our annual meeting at the Weeks Bay Watershed Preserve. The entire state of Alabama is a watershed.
Yep.
So what we put in our water is what we're getting out. That's what we're getting
Yep.
in. So, yeah. All right.
Any more? Does anyone want to, is there, let me see if anybody's raising their hand. Anyone else want to come off mute? And we did go, I'm going to just reinforce what Abigail said. We did go immediately back into the negative part.
We did. So we can go back to the, it's so easy too. That's how easy it is. It's so like, good Lord. How about this? I would love are there any solutions that y'all are particularly excited about? Do y'all know any? Because I can show y'all some sites that y'all can look at for good news.
I know Martha Hunter wants to talk about solutions.
Yeah, Martha, come on.
Oh my God. When you were talking about creating where you want to live, and you talked about wanting to hear birds, and I'm sitting here and I hear all the birds chirping outside my window, and you talked about something else, and I just really realized that I'm very fortunate that I live in an amazing place. We actually created the place we wanted to live in, and so I know it's possible. So anyway.
Yeah, and Martha,
yeah.
sorry. I was saying Martha's house is amazing and has solar panels on it and things like that. Like it is possible. And I see Kathy and Nancy on Stack.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing that I'll say that is to me was really an ear opener. I went up to the eastern shore of Lake Michigan a couple of years ago, and it was just beautiful, but I didn't realize how quiet it was until I came back home and I opened up the door of my car, and it was just deafening, the number of nighttime bugs, because it was the middle of the night and it was hot and humid, and there were all kinds of, I don't know what they were, but it was so loud. And it made me realize the soundscape here in North Alabama is just phenomenal. At night.
That's something I miss the most. The other day, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, my spirits were so low, like so low. And I had to go drive and pick up one of my friends who lives out in the middle of nowhere, like probably like 30 minutes out. And I went to go pick him up, and I just rolled down the windows and I could hear cicadas and the sounds that happen near rivers, because he also grew up near the river, like near the Black Warrior Rivershed. And I got a taste of what I used to hear for the first 18 years of my life. And I cried. I literally cried, because everyone deserves to hear things like that. Everyone deserves to see a night sky that is full of stars. I miss the stars. That's something I miss so much about living in Birmingham. And I want to make that available for everyone. And yeah, I see Nancy's hand is, or she's on stack. She's the one that invited me to this thing, by the way. Thank you, Nancy.
Well, listen, that was an easy invite. Yeah, I've been to Martha's place, and I'm very envious of Martha Hunter's place. It puts me to shame, but I have been in what I call Cloneville since 1985, living in a house that was built in 1969. So I created, and I really am not finished with my creation, but I've created my own little reality here. I put 4 kilowatts of solar on my roof. I'm in the TVA Generation Partner Program, which was phased out in 2019 by a certain group of folks on the board. We won't go there. But I also have renatured my front yard. And I cringe when I drive around and see all the beautiful lawns. Yes, they're beautiful, but they require so many chemicals, so much water. And it takes away a habitat for pollinators and the birds that sing. And I really think because of the trees I have nurtured and maintained, I have some mature hardwoods. We have owls and many types of, and they sing, those owls cry out all night and it's music to our ears. But I'm not saying, oh, look at what I've done, but I am saying, look what can be done. And if, all of us would try to encourage, if you're in a garden club or something, encourage your neighborhood and your neighbors to reconsider what they do with their lawns, grow food. I have a garden in the backyard. I've had raised beds in the front yard. So, I mean, these are small things as individuals we can do, and people drive by and go, oh, look, Pete, you can really do this. So if we all do it, maybe other people will follow suit. That's just my little contribution to this conversation. And thank you, Abigail.
No, thank you, Nancy. That's really true. I actually just got, my partner just bought a bunch of wildflower seeds, and we're going to put wildflowers in the front and backyard for pollinators. We are also, I got a bat house to house bats because bats are really good pollinators. It's things like that. Do the little things. And I agree. And what's funny about my generation in general, something I've noticed is that a lot of us are more willing. I'm talking to my friends and we're being serious, and it's weird that we're adults with adult money. But we're talking about buying land together and living on it together. And I never thought home ownership would even be a possibility in my life, like genuinely. Look at the economy, look at everything, didn't think it. But when we all pitch in for something, which we are, I've talked to these people, we're putting it after I get out of grad school, we're going to buy a bunch of land and build our own intentional community. And that may sound like a pipe dream, but it's real. And we looked into it and things like that. But yeah.
Well, talk to Martha, because they've gone through, they got all the rules and processes to make it work. They've been there for a long time. I see that Mr. John Crowder, you're not on mute. I don't know if that means you want to ask a question or if you just are accidentally not on mute. That's fine if that's the case. Did you have a question, John? Maybe his sound's not on. Okay, I guess not.
Yeah, I do want to uplift a couple of questions or comments. Janine says, I'd love to help review. For example, Fairhope had a tree protection law with double negative rendering it moot, pointed out at the city council meeting, and they had to fix it. That's a solution, in my opinion. That's a solution in real time. Another solution or good news is that Huntsville Earth Day celebration at Hayes Nature Preserve had like 30 to 40 vendors, and our table had a few hundred conversations on climate. Yes, 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 yes. I live on a 1 acre in town that backs up to a wooded creek and park owned by the city. I've made my yard a certified bird, butterfly, and bee sanctuary, which means I have box turtles along with lots of snakes and lizards too, which I love. Yes. Yeah, so these are some solutions. It is 7:30.
Yeah, we're at 7:30. So I feel like if unless anyone has any more burning questions, we can wrap it up. There's a comment about land trust, research land trust. There's a great one in Tennessee. There's also, thank you, Ginny. And the Land Trust of North Alabama is in Huntsville. They're doing some great work up there. There's several in Alabama, as well as the South Alabama Land Trust, the Freshwater Land Trust, and they do provide a lot of, they're doing a lot of land preservation, and they do conservation easements as well. Ginny, did you want to say something in response to that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Cindy. It's specifically an affordable housing queue. That's what I used to lobby for. There's a type of land trust that Majadi Baruti was doing in Birmingham, and Diane is still doing a
Yes.
community land trust. I didn't put the word community in there,
Yes.
where you all go in there and buy the land together, and then people lease it. But Abigail's welcome to connect with me on that. But community land trust is what I was trying to say.
Oh, yeah.
Dynamite Hill, thank you. Yes.
Yes, that's great.
They're
Thank you,
trying to get
Ginny.
off the ground here in Birmingham, but there's one in Tennessee that's been around for a long time that are like grandparents to the Dynamite Hill one.
I must not
Yeah, I
do
thought
too
that was
much
good.
zooming. Can anyone hear me?
We can now. Did you have a question?
Yeah, this is John Crowder. I have a comment. The subject of global climate change is one that's new, and it's got a lot of aspects, and it's a tough study to get up to speed on it. I just wanted to recommend a book I have discovered. The book is called The Octopus in the Parking Garage. It has to do with an octopus that appeared in a parking garage in southeast Miami, owing to the encroachment of tide water higher than it normally gets, a phenomenon that's getting worse there every year. And the writer is a very skillful writer who can take difficult technical information and make it seem simple and almost lyrical. His name is Rob Berchek, Berchek. The book is expensive, but it is well worth every page. The Octopus in the Parking Garage. I've been in that part of Miami and seen some similar phenomena. It's shocking what's happening there. Cities spending billions of dollars to do things like raise streets up higher than they were. Anybody who goes through this book, let me say, nobody who reads this book will come away saying, oh, it's just a liberal fairy tale. They won't.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. I have not heard of that book, so now I'll put it on my list. That sounds really interesting. There's definitely a lot of things happening that are making it pretty impossible to deny the realities of climate change. And I think if you are a municipal leader or working in some of these municipalities that are having to figure this stuff out, you definitely are getting a new view on it if you didn't have that view already, because there's real cost involved in things that we're going to have to deal with. There's things that we aren't going to be able to stop because we're going to have to deal with those costs. We already are. But then, there's the solutions that we've got to start marching toward that Abigail mentioned. And some more book recommendations in the chat. But I do want to wrap us up here. So I want to thank Abigail so much for sharing your wisdom with us. As I mentioned before, I did get to spend many hours, stayed up till 3 a.m. Friday night with some Abigail and some others in the same wonderful generation as Abigail. And they are amazing people, and they are doing amazing work, and they are thinking about solutions. And so I encourage any of you to get a chance to get to know these folks better and spend some time with them and just listen and learn from them. It's definitely enlightening. Abigail, I don't know if you want to say any final words.
Get off this computer, y'all, and rest. Go do something fun. Go have fun. Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks, Nancy Muse and League of Women Voters of Alabama.
Yes. Thank y'all.